Welcome in, everyone. My name is Montana Bush. I will be the MC today, joined by Fatima Ladipo, who is our lobbyist that we retained this year and is helping us with a lot of the legislative type of actions that we're looking at taking on this year. I am the co-chair of Georgia Solar, and I'll let Fatima introduce herself as well. Could you do that real quick, Fatima?
Sure. I'm Fatima Ladipo, and I am part of the Connect Public Relations team, and I am serving as Georgia Solar's lobbyist for this year. And hopefully we together, we've been able to get a lot done, and we'll continue to get a lot done.
I know that's right. So without further ado, I will get into the next step here. Just a quick shout out to our sponsors, of course, who help make everything that we do possible. We have some gold level sponsors here: Nexamp, Euclid Networks, Inman Solar, Creative Solar, Arnold Golden Gregory, Alternative Energy Southeast, and GigaWord Communications. Please take a moment to recognize some of our bronze and silver level sponsors as well. So what I'd like to do is a quick overview of the agenda for the day. We'll be starting out with Seth Gunning, who will go over the state of solar in our state of Georgia. So just a quick overview of where things are today, and boy, they have really developed over the years. So this is something you have to really keep up with to stay abreast of all the changes. Followed by that, we'll have some speakers that are elected officials from the Capitol itself. They may be at the Capitol or they may be working from home, but we'll be looking forward to hearing from them and hearing about some of the very exciting bills that they have to tell us about that'll be going before Congress and our General Assembly. Followed by that, Thatcher Young will be, who is the vice chair of Georgia Solar. He'll be going over our policy objectives here at Georgia Solar. And to close, we'll have Jeanette Gayer, the co-chair with me here. She will be going over some advocacy tips and tricks for how to talk to your legislators and make the most productive outcome of your attempts. So we're really excited to have everyone here with us today, and grateful for y'all being interested in solar and solar advocacy. Now could not be a more important time to have you here and all of us working as hard as we can to push the needle. Now that as many things are in our favor as we could ask for, it's a perfect time. So without that, I will introduce Seth. Seth is the vice chair of the policy committee. He's been on the Georgia Solar Board for a couple of years now. And with that, I will pass it off to you, Seth.
Montana, can you hear me? Just to make sure.
Loud and clear.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that. Like Montana said, my name's Seth Gunning. I am privileged to serve as the vice chairman of the policy committee at your Georgia Solar Energy Association. I'm in my, I think, second year of my first term. And in my day job, work for Creative Solar USA. So, you know, that as many of you know, I'm looking at the list of attendees who are signing up. Lots of you all have been involved in the solar industry for many, many years now. Georgia is a rapidly growing market for solar. We, I think right now, rank 9th in terms of installed capacity around the country. The vast majority of that being utility controlled or utility scale solar. We have roughly approaching 5,000 people employed in the solar energy industry in the state, just over 200 companies doing installation, engineering, manufacturing. In 2009, from 2019 to 2020, Georgia had the fastest rate of solar jobs growth across the country. We added more solar jobs than any other state in the country. And currently we rank 6th in solar manufacturing jobs, largely due to the thanks of Conway Q-Cell up in Dalton, Georgia, the largest solar panel manufacturing facility in the Western Hemisphere, located right in our state. All told, the solar that's installed in Georgia serves enough power to our utility grid to meet the demand of about 300,000 homes. It's about 3% of our total state's electricity production capacity. So we have a long way to go, right? We've been growing very rapidly over the past few years, but there's still lots of opportunity out there to add new capacity. By the end of 2021, we are expected to add 700 megawatts of new utility scale solar, and big potential for there to be a lot of distributed generation added in 2021 as well. Many of you know that Georgia's solar industry is somewhat unique in that its growth has been really driven by the folks who are members of Georgia Solar Energy Association, the business community. Georgia Solar has worked very closely with the Public Service Commission to help advocate for distributed generation, or what we call behind the meter solar. So in Georgia, sort of uniquely, about 98% of the capacity that we have on the grid today is utility controlled or utility scale solar. And only about 2% is behind the meter. And that's solar that's installed on homes and businesses and schools, where the big benefits of renewables are directly going to families and business owners and local governments. And Georgia Solar is sort of uniquely interested in concentrating on expanding that number. Montana, if you want to flip to the next slide, we really want to target a 20% behind the meter or distributed generation number for amount of solar installed behind the meter. We think that shooting for that target really elevates the job growth in the state, right? More jobs are created per megawatt of behind the meter solar than utility scale. There's big opportunity here for us to give the big benefits of solar, to give access to the big benefits of solar to more families, businesses who control their rooftops and can put solar on it. So that's all I really have for where state of the industry, sort of where we are today. I'll take some questions and/or throw it back to you, Montana.
Yeah, attendees, please use the Q&A option on your screens to submit any questions, and Fatima and others will be screening those, and then they'll put that in the chat for panelists to answer live. But yeah, thank you, Seth. So we're currently at 2% of solar in Georgia behind the meter, and the goal is to get to 20%. So we're hoping to remove some of these artificial barriers to behind the meter solar, and that's a big reason why we're here today. So thanks again, Seth. Let's take a moment to get caught up here as we're getting ready to move into the portion of the event today with our elected officials. Just a quick note to everyone watching, if you're only seeing the presentation, you can change your view to see the speaker as well as the presentation by clicking on view options and choose side-by-side mode. But I may take the screen share down when our speakers are talking so that we can all see them. So let's move into this next section. We're going to start with Representative Don Parsons. We're glad to have you here today, Don. A quick introduction about Representative Parsons. He was first elected to the House of Representatives in 1994, representing House District 44, which included portions of Cobb County. Don is the chairman of the Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications Committee. He also serves on the Health and Human Services, Appropriations, and Ways and Means Committee. Representative Parsons served in the United States Army Reserves and the National Guard for a total of 16 years and was employed in the telecommunications industry for 35 years. So, Don, are you with us and able to turn your camera and microphone on? He may have stepped away for a little bit. We'll have to be a little fluid today with our schedule as these lawmakers. They're the busiest individuals you'll ever meet. So hopefully he'll come back soon.
It looks like he's trying to unmute. Chairman, are you there? Chairman Parsons?
You may have stepped away. I know they're in session. If we want, we can take a couple of questions. I know, Seth, you're starting to answer some of the questions. We can take a couple of the questions while we wait on Chairman Parsons to get back.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, one of the questions Bailey Shea asked, what of our neighboring states currently has around a 20% behind the meter or distributed generation sort of percentage of their total installed capacity? So North Carolina and South Carolina are on target to hit about a 20% in end of 2022, 2023. So it is happening. Lots of other states like New Jersey that have had state incentives for behind the meter are very close to that. But even in the Southeast, we have states that are on target to get there. Mr. Christopher Juckins asked, do you think the recent changes to net metering will stay in the next Georgia Power rate case? So yeah, I said that the Georgia Solar Energy Association has been very active at the Public Service Commission, and one of the things that we won out of the 2019 rate case was a monthly net metering requirement for 5,000 Georgia Power customers. So what we know right now is that program is open to 5,000 Georgia Power customers, and to date, I think about 1,900 people have signed up and are in the program. So we still have quite a bit of capacity in that program.
Excellent. Well, it looks like Chairman Parsons is back. So if, Mr. Chairman, if you want to unmute yourself, and you have the floor.
All right, well, thank you. I believe I'm unmuted, and I think the video is on. So somehow the screen disappeared, but we found it. Well, I'm Don Parsons. I'm chairman of the House Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications Committee. And I've had this job now for about 10 years. And I've been on the committee, though, ever since my first day in the General Assembly, which was in 1995. But until I became the chairman, I'd really never thought that much about the energy part of it. It's telecommunications and energy. And my background is in telecommunications. But when I got the chairmanship, I realized that I need to really kind of get into these energy issues also. And so anyway, I guess it was about 9 years, something like that ago, started looking at solar and renewables, mostly because of an aide I had in here who was very interested in it. So we kind of looked into it together. And I through the Georgia Chamber, I guess it was, we had sort of a conference down at Plant Shera down around Macon, and had a lot of people come in to talk about renewables and solar. And as a lot of you know, there wasn't much interest in it then, but it was a good meeting, and at least it kind of got me kick-started. And I started meeting a lot of people, including I met the gentleman who at that time was the the Minister of Energy for Great Britain. And he was a conservative. The way they do it there is different from here, of course. I don't really understand it, but he was a member of parliament, a conservative member of parliament. And one thing that he said that struck me then was that, and he was doing a lot in Britain for renewables. And he said that there's not really no reason in conservative policy or conservative thought that we should just do traditional sources of energy to the exclusion of renewables. And I thought, that's really true. Unfortunately, a lot of times it does come down to ideology, and for some reason, the renewables are kind of falling mainly on the traditional side to the exclusion of renewables. So that's kind of where I, got interested in doing some things with solar, and maybe looking at whether or not we should have at least a volunteer type goal for certain portfolio in the state, and a lot of pushback from industry on that. But I think I saw where former Representative Dudgeon's on here. So I don't know how many years ago this was. It was a few years ago. We talked about solar and rooftop solar, and Mike Dudgeon kind of took that on, and he had a bill that he worked on for about 2 years, I think it was, and a tough issue to work with, but he did a really good job. We eventually got that bill passed, or he did. He's the one who did all the hard work on it, which allows for rooftop. Rooftop, of course, is not allowed anyway, but rooftop in Georgia, where another third party could come in and provide it, and then the customer gets a huge discount on what they have to pay for solar, because they're getting the benefit of the solar against against their bill. And we had another meeting a couple of years later when Mike Dudgeon, Representative Dudgeon at that time, was still on the committee, and we were looking into why there was why there was a lot of resistance from the utilities, and why apparently there's a lot of roadblocks to actually people being able to do that. And I don't think we ever got any real satisfactory answers, but we did get some answers, and it's something that we probably need to look at in the future. But solar and the renewables are important to me, and I think they're important to the state, because among other things, we don't have any traditional sources of energy in Georgia. Everything that we get outside of renewables come from someplace else, whether it's coal or petroleum, natural gas. They all come from someplace else. We do have sunshine in the state, and it always made sense to me to try to use that. And as over the years since I've been involved in it, I've learned it's not as easy as it seems. There are reasons that it's not always easy to go to solar. I mean, the industry and some of their feedback, it proves to be correct in many ways. They're correct about some of the things that they've come back, and they've done industry in the state, Georgia Power, and the membership organizations have done some good work to improve and increase the amount of solar power or solar energy that they have. And I think that's good. Whether it's hard to say what percentage it should be and how much they should go to, but I think that they've at least opened up to it. I always figured that once it became, the cost was not such an issue, that they would probably open up to it, which they have. And y'all may have questions. I don't know. I don't want to take up my whole 15 minutes in talking. But there are issues, I guess I should mention. I think you all know, because in many ways you know a lot more about this than I do. But there are issues with storage. Batteries have not been perfected or storage in general have not been perfected to the point that we need to have, I think, solar on a grander scale. There are issues with the grid, where the energy goes, where the solar power goes on, and what kind of issues it will cause for the grid. And we know that in California, they have gone too far with solar, to the point that they've had to pay other companies outside of California, organizations outside of California, to actually take some of their solar on occasion, because they were producing too much, and it was harmful for the grid. So there are a lot of issues that have to be considered in all this. But I am I'm an advocate for renewables, not just solar, but that anything that we don't have to go outside of the state and pay for, and for things that are not finite, like the renewable energy, the traditional sources of energy, rather. And, the estimates for how long these traditional sources will last, vary, sometimes 200 years for some source, and then it goes up to 1,000 years or 75 years. I don't know, but I do know that I do know this: those traditional sources of energy are finite. At some point, it may not be in my grandchildren or my great grandchildren's time, but at some point, those things are going to be gone. And I think that at that time, people will be looking back and saying, "Why didn't we in this, this 21st century? Why didn't we do more quickly than we have?" So solar energy has become a huge benefit in Georgia, and as state leaders, I believe it's our responsibility to do all we can to develop policies that will help move the renewables and solar along. And if I can go further, but if there are any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Thank you, Congressman.
Oh, you're welcome.
We appreciate your leadership on solar and openness to trying something different. And I hear you on everything you said, and I feel like Georgia, there's enough solar installed on a large scale in other places, states, countries, that we can learn from what's worked and what hasn't worked and do something really great here in Georgia. So Fatima and other panelists, do we have any questions for Congressman Parsons here?
At the moment, I don't see any questions specifically for Chairman Parsons, but attendees, if you have questions, if you could just quickly put them in the Q&A. And Mr. Chairman, if you give us just a minute.
Sure. I will say while we're waiting, one thing I failed to mention is that, we don't have here in the Georgia House or the Georgia General Assembly, we don't have the kind of staff that they have in, we don't have the number of people to staff up like they do in Washington, D.C. We have good staff, and I would have to say that I've been helped a lot on this issue over all these issues that I deal with, but in solar energy and renewables over the last several years by Blake Doss, who's actually in here with us, and he's been a real a wonderful source to do research and find answers to a lot of different issues. I think a lot of you have probably spoken at some time or another with Blake. And I should also say too, while I'm sitting here, Keith Hatcher, who's now helping to represent you all, I've known Keith for a long time. We've known each other for probably over 25 years. I'm sure over 25 years. And he has done a wonderful job. Trust is so important in the legislative process. I saw somebody had I think today may be Speaker Tom Murphy's, would have been Speaker Tom Murphy's birthday. And I saw somebody had a post on a while ago, and they said that the first thing that Speaker Murphy told them when they came to the Capitol as a lobbyist, you only need to bring one thing here, and it's your honesty and your trust. And it's true. And Keith Hatcher, as you wouldn't be here these many years representing organizations if that weren't the case with that person. And Keith is certainly one of those people, and he does a fantastic job, and I'm glad to be working with him again on issues.
So we do have one question that's just popped up, Mr. Chairman, about pooling resources to develop community solar projects.
Yes.
But there's some concern about the current law that makes that not able to happen. And so the question is there something that working with you and the committee that could be changed so that there's an option for that here in the state of Georgia?
Well, I mean, of course, we're always glad and happy to look into things. I assume that maybe that they're referring to the Territorial Act in the reselling of electricity, and not just a reselling, but somebody producing and selling electricity within the territory that is assigned to Georgia Power or the EMCs or the MEAGs. And it would have to center around that, I believe. I couldn't tell you for sure, but yeah, I mean, that's what we had to deal with when we passed the, and Mike Dudgeon here again was the principal sponsor on that. That's something we had to deal with on the rooftops solar. And it's just an issue that the way the law currently reads, that has to be addressed. I'd be more than happy to try to help with it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what can be, I don't know what can be done or what would have to be done or what speed it could be done, but it's certainly something I'd be glad to look at.
Okay, then we have another question, a couple of questions that have popped up about House Bill 483, which is the HOA solar bill, and wanting to get your thoughts on that bill. And obviously we've passed crossover day, but your thoughts on elements of something like that passing in the future.
Well, I have not read the bill. I know I'm somewhat familiar with the issue. We had a solar rooftop, not rooftop, but a homeowners association bill probably 5-6 years ago, at least, something like that. In fact, I think it finally came to the floor, and it seemed like for some reason it didn't, because of opposition, obviously it didn't pass. But it's always a tricky issue. In fact, Keith Hatcher is somebody who's perfectly suited to work with you and advise all of us on that. But it's just the issue of not everybody likes the looks of solar panels. I mean, I think it would have to be done in such a way that where the panels are faced, or not necessarily faced, but I mean where they would be located and where they would be seen on rooftops and things of that nature. I mean, it's these homeowner associations can be pretty tough to deal with, some a lot more than others, and it's always hard to try to force something down somebody's throat. And I don't know. I haven't read this bill, and I'm certainly not in opposition to it.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, that's really where it came down last time is HOAs are private entities as opposed to the government. And that's where I think most of the General Assembly felt like there needed to be a division that the HOAs, you start deciding what HOAs can and cannot do, the General Assembly is going to be in all their time down here deciding what HOAs can and cannot do.
Yeah.
So that was where the division came, was kind of a separation between, this is not a government entity, this is a group of private citizens that band together and decided these rules are going to live under, and the General Assembly didn't want to necessarily interfere in those rules.
Right.
But we think the market's going to eventually drive that. More and more people are members of HOAs, and they're going to demand their HOA open up to the idea because it's going to become so popular, cost efficient. So I think those barriers are going to fall over time from private citizen to private citizen without the need for government intervention.
Okay, I think you probably just heard Keith, and I think what he's saying is right on target. It's something that needs to be addressed and looked at, because that's a lot of solar energy that can be used in those homeowners association, and a lot of electricity that can be produced. So I'm certainly willing, if it were in this committee, which it may or may not be, but if it were in this committee, certainly willing to look at it, and I have no issues with it. I can tell you that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if you will oblige me for one more question.
Okay, sure.
And I'll kind of mix it in. You kind of led us down a little path about economic development and solar. And so we have two questions that I'm going to kind of merge together.
Okay.
One is, will there be state level incentives for solar in the future? Now, obviously, our economy is getting a little better, so that's something that we have a question on. And then the other is, if we're producing more electricity, couldn't we share or sell? So is there an opportunity for a market to be able to sell to our neighbors? So kind of mixing those two together from an economic standpoint.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard to say. I would just say most likely, as far as monetary incentives from the state, my guess would be that would not happen in Georgia. We don't offer many incentives anyway. And Georgia is a very fiscally conservative state. And I think we've done a good job with that. And we have our AAA bond rating. We have to protect that always. And I mean, it's something that, you know, we pass incentives from time to time. I'm not saying it wouldn't happen. I don't think I'd hang my hat on that one, but you know, it could happen, but I don't think so, to give you the best answer I can. And then now, what was the second question? I forgot already. The second
question was about if we're producing all this electricity, is there an opportunity to then sell it to our neighbors?
Well, you know, I mean, that can actually be done. I mean, that is kind of what's done currently through the rooftop solar legislation that was passed. Anything, it would be hard to go. I think it'd be difficult to go beyond that. That's when you really, because we do have companies and membership organizations in the state that produce electricity. I mean, that's what they're given their territories for, and they're very jealous of those, which I really can't blame them. That's their job, and they do their best to produce that electricity at the lowest cost. And like I say, they are providing more or using more renewable energy to do that. It would depend on the how it's framed and exactly, you know, what we're looking at. I wouldn't say it wouldn't happen. It would be a sort of a tough haul. It's not something that could happen, I don't think, real quickly or anything like that. But I mean, I wouldn't say it couldn't be done. I mean, I actually tend to agree that something like that should be available. It's a tough haul, is what I'm saying, and a lot of work would have to be done on it. I mean, my philosophy is that, and it's tough in this state, the way it's set up, but we're lucky in this state that we have reliability, and we have generally very, you know, low prices for the energy that we consume. But but that makes it tougher to have more customer control over the energy sources that they use. But I do believe that moving forward, we need to move where customers have more choices. They need to be able to choose the type of energy that they want to use, if it's renewable or traditional, maybe even between gas and coal for that matter. But people should have, I think they should have more of a choice and more say in what they use. And of course, we have a growing number of people. But I'll also say this, because that the reliability in our state has been very sound and the price is generally low, you know, there hasn't been an outcry in Georgia for a lot of change. And I applaud you all for, you know, what you're doing and being a voice in this. But there hasn't been an outcry like I think maybe that there have been in other states where, you know, we demand more renewables, and we're willing to give up or at least risk some of the reliability and risk having the prices go higher. I haven't seen that. And so I'm not saying that's good or bad. I haven't seen that. And I think that there has to be more coming from the public to demand that kind of thing before we probably will see much change in it.
Hi, this is Representative Kim Schofield.
Hi, Representative Schofield. Just right quick, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, thank you.
We appreciate you taking your time to meet with us today.
Absolutely, glad to do it anytime.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Take care. All right. We'd like to move right into our next speaker, Representative Kim Schofield. State Rep Kim Schofield serves the citizens of House District 60, which includes the areas of Southeast Atlanta, East Point, College Park, Forest Park, and Hapeville. She was elected to the Georgia General Assembly in 2017 and serves on the Small Business Development, Interstate Cooperation, and Health and Human Services committees. Kim's professional career spans across healthcare, financial, transportation, education, and nonprofit agencies, and she is a small business owner as well. Representative Schofield is the sponsor of HR 70, a resolution urging the support of a state goal of 100% clean energy by 2050. Representative, are you still with us there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. And you know, I appreciate what the chairman says, but I tend to disagree that there is an outcry right now, at least from where I'm hearing. And people want options. And I think the state, as conservative as we are, we need to move and shift to start opening up some avenues where we can have choices. So I guess I tend to disagree with the outcry of what I'm hearing in my community, as well as when we talk about clean and renewable energy, we want to make sure that not only are we providing green jobs, but we want to make sure that we're protecting our communities and our children in the future. As I said to some of the my legislative colleagues, that most of you are in opposition to renewable air, won't even be here in the next 20 years because of, if you look at the average age in the Georgia General House, and then you know that we're not going to be here. Let's do something that's going to protect our grandchildren and our great-great-grandchildren, and start moving into something that we know is eventually happening anywhere and anyway. So most cities and states have passed some type of legislation. And so to keep kind of delaying the inevitable just makes no sense to me.
That is great.
So Representative Schofield, can you tell us a little bit about what specifically prompted you to introduce the resolution? And are there groups that you've been working on, not just to get the resolution passed, but to continue to make the changes necessary to get us to that point?
Well, I think what prompted me is, again, if you look at what's going on in the state of climate right now, this is not something that from a health perspective that people in my community are really in tune to. It doesn't mean that everyone is not aligned with wanting to improve the environment. But what happens is we're more focused on, you know, how do we provide stability in our households and our workplaces? And so we're not thinking about the environment. I, on the other hand, have to think in places and act in places that impact a community that we don't normally talk about or even focus on a day-to-day level. Again, I'm trying to protect our water, our air, making sure that we have resources and renewable resources that are untapped in my community, that we don't sit at the dinner table talking about this kind of stuff anymore. So what drew me to this was that I knew I had to step into a space that's not a familiar space, and we have to take action. And the pushback I got was that, again, it's right in front of our face. How can we deny this? So to tell me, no, I don't want to give you a hearing on your bill, or no, this is not an important subject that we want to address in the state of Georgia, it just did not make sense. That's not common sense to me. So if you put something and we see the change from solar to clean energy to everything, you cannot say that we're the best and the brightest to work, live, and then leave that big component out. So I think I stepped into this place because it was time for us to step up and level up in this area.
Thank you for that. We definitely can't keep doing things business as usual, right?
No, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, you know, again, I was just told, no, we're not going to give you a hearing on this. We're not going to move this forward. And then I looked at a lot of the energy groups and a lot of the advocacy groups that are in this space and say, we all can't be wrong. I mean, somebody's missing the obvious in the room. And so we're going to have to figure out, how do we make a stronger, bigger, better when it comes to renewable energy and start holding the people accountable. I heard the chairman say that it's going to be a heavy lift. Okay, yes, it's going to be heavy, but isn't that what we do? We're going to have to take this on. And I'm willing to step in the space to take on what we need to move us ahead, to be more competitive, to be more attractive, to be more in the forefront of solar power and making sure that we are 100% clean and renewable energy. It's time. So it wasn't a passion, it was a calling. It was a necessity. It was a time issue.
Right. I know our membership feels you on that, and we're going to mobilize to help support that and make some phone calls and set up some meetings. So.
Well, I'm here from you. Again, this was just the first step. Again, we know that we've got a lot of work to do in this space, but I think there are more people that are with us than the small percentage of people that want to keep Georgia as it is and say we're so conservative that we stop. Conservative does not necessarily mean that you become frozen and immobilized and just stop. It means that you may look at a bigger strategy, but we've got to start moving the needle forward. I don't know how to make it any clearer that we can be conservative in one place that is actually hurting us. So it's now time to move this forward. You say, how can you help me? Let's sit down and let's strategize as to what we need to do around the other side to move Georgia forward in this space. Who needs to be at the table? And more importantly, what are they bringing to the table and what are they taking away that we can move and take action on? There's got to be if he needs to hear more voices, then let's start aligning the voices and let's get these voices amplified so that it's not just a few people making decisions that we don't hear enough voices. Again, I don't know where he's hanging out, but I hear a whole lot of outcries that it's time.
So Representative Schofield, we have sort of a question comment that says perhaps energy equity goals could be an accelerator for more flexible solar energy options in the state. Specifically, those of us, the members of the association with open land could generate power that is somehow made available for those lower income families. Yeah. So is that something that you think
yes,
is?
Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been again trying to have these sidebar conversations, and it's a 50-50 chance that we can get some traction on that. And so I think that's a space where we can start laying the breadcrumbs to start moving us along. So I'd be open to let's sit down and strategize. Let's talk about our next step. Let's look at all of our options and let's move forward.
Wonderful. Are there any last questions for Representative Schofield? All right, we will definitely be taking you up on your offer to work, especially during the interim, because this is something that we can't just leave to the leadership of the General Assembly, like you said, to wait and hear from enough people to feel like it's time to move. We need to move on this as quickly as possible, and planning is very important.
Right, action. And I thank you for having me here today. Again, if you can reach me at 404-656-0220. I'll put my information in the chat before I leave. If anybody knows me, they know that Kim stands for Keep It Moving. So I'm ready to get things done. We're ready to work together. Again, I may not have 20 or 30 years for the light bulb to go off in everyone else's head about renewable energy. Let's move and strike now.
All right. We'll take that KIM motive and carry it forward with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you for your leadership.
So Montana, while we wait on our next speaker, I don't know if you or Seth or Thatcher want to answer some of the policy related questions that's come in on the chat and the Q&A.
Yeah, thanks, Fatima. So this is Thatcher. So I have been trying to respond kind of live, 2 questions as they come in, both on the chat and the Q&A. But we will also make sure that we get responses to folks' questions even after the session's over. I think one I'll hit a couple thematic questions maybe. So one has been just about this issue with HOAs. So we are going to talk about HB 483 a little later in the program. But one of the structural challenges with homeowners associations is they are non-regulatory or non-regulated entities, right? They are private associations. And so typically the only means for sort of adjudicating an issue with them is civil litigation, which is expensive and complicated for anybody. So changing the rules of HOAs in any kind of blanket way has been increasingly difficult for the state. And I think as Chairman Parsons indicated in his comments, and members of the General Assembly have been reticent to kind of step into that issue in the past. But hopefully that's changing, and we'll talk about that more a little later in HB 483. Another question sort of came around, well, how is, and Rep. Schofield mentioned this a little bit too, times are changing, right? So there's been several questions about, what do we foresee with the new Biden-Harris administration and how are they going to shift things? I think, the most significant thing that I would say is renewables is no longer a four-letter word in Washington, D.C. So you are already hearing people talk about climate change, talk about climate disruption. The president has committed to rejoining the Paris Accords. That, of course, has to be ratified by the U.S. Senate in order for it to be official. But there is, certainly odds on his side that he could pass that through the Senate. So, it's early days. He's dealing with a global pandemic that he inherited. So, I think his focus is rightly placed on getting people vaccinated and back to school and work. But I think hopefully in his second 100 days, we will see some significant shifts toward increasing benefits for renewable energy generation on the grid. There'll likely be some additional things coming out of some of the economic recovery acts that are likely to come forward later in the year. So I think very positive, just general climate in DC, which differs from what we've experienced, over the last several years. Montana, any other ones you see on there that we missed?
That covers pretty much everything that's solid at this point, but there's definitely some other things that are being looked at as well that could be very beneficial. So
yeah. So Montana, while we wait for Representative Frye, do you want me to kind of jump into just a more general update on kind of our policy priorities to kind of keep things moving? Can you bring that?
Sure thing. Let's do that. So, yeah, let me introduce you, Thatcher. Thatcher Young here, who's our vice chair of the Georgia Solar Board. He's been, I think you're on your second term with the board, which is 3 years each term. So longer than I have been on the board. But before I remember, so you may be on your fifth term, but I think you're on your second. Yeah, Thatcher, I'm going to put up your next slides here so you can talk about our policy priorities.
Great. Well, thanks for that introduction, Montana. I think as we've learned safely with none of our elected friends with us right now, longevity doesn't necessarily denote impact. So while you may have served a shorter amount of time, I think you've made a tremendous impact on the organization. So thank you for all you do.
It's too kind.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about kind of Georgia Solar's priorities from a policy perspective. As everybody knows, this can get really wonky really quickly. So I've attempted to kind of stay light on jargon and light on acronyms, or at least to explain those acronyms when we use them. And the goal here is for everybody on this call to just have a general sense of, what is most important to helping grow solar energy in Georgia. And as we've talked about, remove those barriers to growing solar energy. So the first and foremost is this, for many businesses and many homeowners, is an economic decision. So we are working on a number of initiatives that would create a higher value for solar. And that's all solar. So that's BTM, or behind the meter, meaning solar that's directly connected to your residential home's meter or your business's meter. Distributed generation, so that would be solar that's on the grid but not directly connected to your business or your home. And then finally, utility scale, right? Because the reality is, the more of these large systems that go on the grid, the lower the cost of that equipment is for the rest of us, right? And so we want to continue to see our utility friends invest in solar energy. And then lastly, storage. And use of electric vehicles for storage in the future, right? So we're kind of working through a myriad of legislative and regulatory challenges and channels to do that, and we can talk more specifically about that. The second priority is to improve the renewable energy utility tariffs and net metering policies that currently exist. So a perfect example of this is if you're a Georgia Power customer, they have their R&R tariff, renewable, non-renewable tariff, and we want to see a greater value for the energy that you're generating on your home or business. And we got a really big win in that last year in net metering. So you now get a 1-for-1 value at your retail rate, either on your home or on your business, for the solar that your system generates, up to some cap that we can talk about. But then also creating just more of a fair market for solar and storage on the grid, right? That does, again, continue to improve those economics. The third one is we're working to reduce and eliminate discriminatory fees, rules, and policy that limit solar's value to the customer. So I'll put my own utility, Marietta Power, on the hot seat for a second. So they have a $7 a kilowatt feed-in tariff for solar. So just for putting solar on my home or my business, I have to pay them $7 a kilowatt to generate energy on my premise that I'm going to use first and then potentially put back to them. That's really, there's no sense in a policy like that at all, except to limit folks from putting solar on their home or business. And so we're working at a utility level directly, but then also at a legislative level, locally and at the state level to reduce things like that. Other ones that you may have experienced or you might see are standby charges or capacity charges, demand charges. There's a whole host of them. So we just tried to throw some of the names of them up so that you would kind of be aware of what those are and can kind of keep a lookout for those. And then we're also working in as much as we can at a local or a state level to reduce zoning ordinances that restrict solar or covenants at a neighborhood or an HOA level. And I think the last thing I would say there is, because that's such a distributed, one-on-one situation, if you are encountering a challenge with your local zoning board, your county commission, your city council, or your HOA, let us know that. And we'd be happy to help get involved with you and meet with them and try to do some of that education and try to help come up with a fair treatment for solar and a restriction or a reduction in those restrictions, sorry. And then the last one is creating and expanding a more open market, energy market in Georgia. And so this is, includes things like providing consumer choice and giving, every Georgian access to the big benefits of solar energy. So we talked a little bit about community solar, right? So creating pathways to consumer controlled community solar, creating paths for things like virtual net metering, et cetera. And so the last thing I would say is we are actively working right now on a number of initiatives at a state, local level, and at a federal level that advances all of these priorities. And so please stay tuned for kind of our e-news on a monthly basis and some other targeted communication about the efforts that we're doing to advance these priorities and others. So with that, I'll stop for a second and we can take a couple questions.
I've got a poll, actually. We'd like to hear from our membership about these priorities and get y'all's opinion on this. So I will throw that poll up now. And thank you for that, Thatcher, that overview. Also wanted to point out that while people are voting here, that there is some serious brass in that room. I see 2 former chairs of Georgia Solar in there with you as well. Is that Sharon Lee? Hey, Sharon.
Yeah.
And James Marlowe, hello as well. I failed to mention too that Thatcher was the chairman of the policy committee for a couple of years while we did the 2016 IRP, I believe, and the rate case.
That's right. Yeah, and then again in 2019. So.
Yeah. Which led to monthly netting. So we're really getting some things done, I feel like. All right, we got a lot of great answers coming in here. So it looks like we're still getting some more of these coming in.
Do we have any? So a question came in. Does the wonkiness of these policy change priorities make it difficult for the general public to rally behind them? Yes, absolutely, it does. I think politics is a uniquely wonky space. And so, yes, we are attempting to do that, to improve our communications, to make kind of our public-facing messages simpler, cleaner, and easier for folks to understand and use. But the reality is, if you want to be involved in public policy, you're going to have to take the time to kind of get to know, some of these terms and some of these issues and do a bit of homework. So it isn't something either for the faint or heart or the uninitiated to participate in. So, we have a number of resources. A number of us are happy to spend time with you directly and collectively to get up to speed on that. And there's going to be a lot more to come after this meeting for folks who do want to get directly involved in advocacy, to have some education opportunities and to kind of get clued in on some of those acronyms and some of the wonkiness.
Absolutely. I'll post up the poll results here for people to see. Looks like a general consensus around improving utility tariffs and net metering policies and creating and expanding a more open energy marketplace. While the other 2 options were not exactly ignored by any means, but some good information there. Thank you all for voting.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions for Thatcher? And Fatima, please keep us on track if you see the other speakers arrive.
We are still good. They have not joined us yet.
Okay. All right. Any final questions? Are we good? Well, to move into the next section here.
Yep, I think we are on time. So yeah, if you want to just go ahead and tee it up for Jeanette, and then we can break for Representative Frye when he's available.
Okay.
Apparently he's meeting about vaccine distribution, so that's pretty important.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll have to be fluid here.
Yeah.
So next, I'd like to introduce Jeanette Gayer, who is the co-chair with me at Georgia Solar. And she's also executive director of a Environment Georgia. So she's very involved with things at the Capitol under the Gold Dome. So this should be a very informative session on how to talk to your legislator, set up meetings, etc. Jeanette, can you
Actually,
please?
Thatcher,
ahead.
I just noticed that Mr. Mike Dudgeon joined us. So I'm going to punt it back to you to introduce him. I think we should let him say hello.
Yeah, this is my one window I can talk to y'all, so I have
Thank
something
you for
else,
joining us.
no problem. Cool.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
So I'll go ahead and introduce you.
Okay, cool.
Mike Dudgeon currently serves as the policy director for Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan. He's a lifelong technology entrepreneur, a former state representative, and former Forsyth County School Board member. He was part of an executive team that built Alpharetta-based Radiant Systems, which pioneered touchscreen retail and kiosk and high-res studios, the largest video game company in Georgia. Wow. He is a Georgia Tech graduate, has 3 grown boys, and lives with his wife in Forsyth County, where they are active foster parents. And I know, Mike, you played a key role in getting HB 57, the Solar Power Free Market Financing Act, passed in 2015. So it's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for joining us today.
Sure, glad to be with you. Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been 5 years, 6 years since House Bill 57, but so I know this is group, this is the pro solar, pro green energy group, and so I'm talking to the choir, so to speak. But the important thing that I've tried to do here in the Capitol is separate the pros and the positive benefits from solar, green energy, and grid modernization from the subsidies argument. And that was one nice thing with Senate Bill 57 is that we were looking at something that was good policy for Georgians that would help the industry get over the inertia of the big power companies whose lawyers were effectively stopping rooftop solar, to get that out of the way in order to be able to move forward without a subsidy, because Senate governors were elected Republican, I was elected Republican, and unfortunately, some of the good of the green energy movement has been contaminated, not quite the right word, but it has been, some of the excesses in subsidies and some of the things that happened under Obama, and it gave a bad taste to a lot of Republicans, that this was all just a scam, that we were just trying to give a bunch of money to a bunch of green people that didn't really make any sense. And so I spent a lot of my time trying to explain to people, this is where we're going, this is where the technology is going, it has tremendous benefits for everybody. And that's why we did 57. What's interesting to me though, is even after 57 that, we still haven't seen explosion of rooftop solar in Georgia. And I think that's part of it is related to the fact that we still have pretty cheap utility scale electricity. Our friends at Georgia Power and the EMCs actually do a pretty good job of delivering cheap and reliable. We haven't had the grid go down like Texas or California, thank goodness. And so you say, I put rooftop solar in my own house a year and a half ago and been super excited with it. Tons of fun, 10 kilowatt system. I had a perfect south facing roof and have lots of fun with that. In fact, here's my graph for today on my for my system. So having lots of fun with that, but realize my ROI payback is like 15 years because even I have net metering with Sony, EMC being nice to me, but it's because the electricity is relatively cheap in Georgia, it's a little bit harder to get some of the things economically through. Though I heard a podcast yesterday that California is looking at undoing net metering out there because the utilities have gone crazy. So I don't know. But, I've been working with Steve and several other people. I mean, it's been 5 years since we've had a substantive solar discussion of any type in the legislature. It's really kind of been a dead issue. And so we need to pick that up and need to get the discussion started again. I think it's a winning issue on both sides of the political aisle. As long as you stay, you don't tie it too hard to subsidies, I think you can win both sides of it. And there's still some real issues. Sony's nice, they give me net metering, but most places here in Georgia do not. The whole solar avoidance cost is too low. There's still a hodgepodge of local regulations about, how it is approved. I'll never forget when my expert installer was actually a friend of mine. We put it in. I'm an electrical engineer, so I worked with him a little bit. I knew exactly what we were doing. And here comes the inspector from the county to sign off on it. He's like, "What is this?" I have no idea. We explained kind of what it was. Like, okay, signed the paper, walked out. So we got lucky. In a lot of counties, people could have been tortured to death by some inspector who didn't know what it was. There's no uniform rules. So cleaning up some of the uniform rules, I think, would be important in order to speed up adoption. Like I said, doing something on the net metering front, maybe you don't go all the way that way, but at least you move the needle from where it is today. And the punitive minimum charges are silly and unwarranted. That don't really make any sense. In my ideal fantasy universe that doesn't exist, we would be like gas marketers and we would split the grid cost from the energy cost, and you could just, everyone pays for the grid and the grid is the grid and you pay for it and then you pay for your energy separately. But that's an act of Herculean effort in politics that's not for today. But in my fantasy world, that's what I would do. So that's kind of where my mind is at. I didn't get coaching about exactly what to talk about. So I probably want to open it for questions, or y'all can direct me to talk about whatever you want to talk about for the next few minutes, and be glad to see if I can answer questions or give you information on something.
That's great. Yeah, Fatima, please look and see what questions we have for Mr. Dudgeon.
Okay.
And I'll say Sony EMC, as a solar integrator, myself and my company, Saudi EMC is actually one of our favorites because they have net metering and they have time-based rate plans.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
The solar produces, of course, during the times that rates are higher. So it works out.
No, Sony, it made me gamify my electricity too, because I started using the hourly Sony app about how much electricity I was using. Not only was I generating my own solar, but I was also being better about turning crap off I wasn't using anyway, because I gamified my electricity consumption. So
you can actually see down to the hour how much power you're using, and that's provided by the utility.
Yeah,
wow.
So like here, you see, this is yesterday when it was real sunny. It mostly was negative because during the sunny part of the day, I wasn't home, wife's not home, the house is just sitting there, just pouring power to the grid. In fact, I accessed 42 kilowatt hours to the grid yesterday. So my lifetime solar is since a year and 2 months is 14 megawatt hours. So I'm cranking in Forsyth County.
And so if you didn't have net metering, that would be getting sent back at just wholesale cost.
At 2 cents, 2.5 or whatever it is. Yep.
Wow.
No, Sony's great good people up there.
So we have a couple of questions.
Sure.
But I'm going to take a little of the question reader privilege. Okay. And being a Georgia Tech alum also, I wanted to ask you, are there things we can do as a state? Obviously, it's come up a couple of times during today about challenges with batteries. So are there things that we can do as a state to incentivize the research or other necessary elements of the barriers to batteries or solar walls?
Yeah, I've always said that if you could have an order of magnitude increase in battery density cost, you could completely revolutionize power in all areas. So I'm a big believer in battery research. I've talked to some guys. I know there's some guys at GTRI doing some work on that. So yeah, it's really a good idea. I'm not, Lieutenant Governor's got a task force working on Georgia being a technology capital of the East Coast, and and green energy stuff is part of that as well. And you're right, battery is a secret sauce. If you can store energy, you massively solve a lot of your problems. So I'm all for it. I don't have any specific ideas right now. You know, we're trying to promote it where we can and put it on the high list. We don't have any specific economic incentive programs that count for that right now, though.
So our next question has to do with the pull on the grid. So the question is, as households and businesses adopt electric vehicles, which need fast recharging and put extra loads on the grid, how is the state looking at rooftop solar with power walls to defer grid capacity costs and the balanced demand, given the use of the more electric cars being a part of our everyday life?
Yeah, that reminds me, several months ago, I saw, I don't know if it was in UK or Europe, somebody put up a huge solar EV charging thing. And I sort of said, so do X number of cars at whatever amp charging for these high-speed EV charging. And so I kind of doodled on my envelope, you know, if it was cloudy, how long their batteries would have to last in order to be able to, you know, not be out of gas, so to speak, right? That's it's tough. And the battery technology, you have to have a very, you have to have a ton of battery storage to be able to guarantee. In other words, I guess you don't want an EV charging station that's dead. In other words, it's like, it's like essentially a gas station being out of gas. Obviously, you can hook to the grid to be backed up. So I think that's really part of the whole general other equation. In other words, if we assume the grid has to be there all the time in order to give us 24/7 reliability, and I may want to charge my car on a cloudy day or a winter day and 5:30 when it's dark, and you know, on a Friday and all that stuff. So I think it's all part of the thing. So basically, you know, we will get behind and cheerlead any sort of projects where we're trying to put more solar on rooftops or in local installations in order to get that going, with the understanding that even with really good batteries, you know, you got to be careful about over promising. And that's another thing I always tell my friends in the solar and the green energy thing, is that another way that can get you a little bit in trouble with, especially Republican legislators, is if you overpromise like it's a magic solution to everything, because you got the power companies coming in, they're saying, talking about, you know, a lot of myths on their side. But if there's a practical thing in the middle, which is we need our power companies, we need the 24/7 reliability until we get a lot further down the road with green energy and energy storage at the grid scale, which is a big problem that's we're starting to solve, but we're not there yet. So anyway, all for all that kind of stuff, with a practical concern, maybe being a double E, doing math on current and you know, amp hour storage, about making sure that we don't have a gas station out of gas, so to speak.
Excellent.
We've gotten other questions about homeowners.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. About homeowners associations and the challenge with homeowners being able to put solar. And obviously there's a piece of legislation that was introduced on the House side, but other legislation, similar legislation, has been introduced over the course of the last few years. So we just kind of want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it was funny. I worked with Carla Drenner, a representative in the House. We had a bill about solar, trying to take the fangs out of HOAs on solar, arbitrary solar holdbacks. And the bill, I think it was 86 to 84, which, in the funny, Dr. Drenner's college class was in attendance in the gallery, and they started cheering because they thought the bill had passed. But in Georgia, takes 91 votes, which is half of the 180 members, no matter who many votes no, it just takes 91 to pass a bill. So they were clapping, but Carl and I were dejected because we had missed it by 4 votes, because the real estate lobbyists had gone crazy and killed the bill. I didn't know the House was looking at it again. That's good to know. That is a problem. I recognize that, and the legislature does need to re-engage. And that's why I think it's so important that the industry re-engages at a more intense level of the legislature. When I first got here in 2011, I mean, Buddy Carter, now congressman, was, going after third-party purchase agreements and very aggressive on solar issues. And we had a bunch of activity. And then I did House Bill 57, kind of gone silent. So the HOA is definitely an area where we need better protection for solar in the law. And I think we need to pursue that aggressively. I'm glad to know the House is working on it, though yesterday was crossover day, so everything is dead for the year. I don't remember seeing that bill come over from the House on my list in the Senate here, but that's something we need to work on badly because it is a real problem. It can be very arbitrary. I was miracle. My roof that faces south also faces off of our neighborhood into a park. And so I argue with HOA, like, you can't even see my roof from anywhere in the neighborhood. You have to go back in the public park to see my roof. And so luckily I was able to get it through without too much shenanigans.
Any other questions for?
I clicked on the Q&A thing. I know the gentleman said about power walls. He was talking about at home or business power walls, like the Tesla power banks and stuff like that. So I'm not sure what the government can do with that. I think it's a great idea. Again, if you don't have net metering, that's really kind of the only way to make it work in a residential area is, be able to store your own energy and use it when you need it. I didn't put in batteries for my installation, though I plan to do it next year. I think they're great. If there's suggestions on what the government can do to help there, I'm open, but I'm not sure what policy-wise we could do there that would help. So.
Well, it sounds like you've given us a couple of calls to action. The main one being that the industry as a whole needs to engage with the legislature.
I know Jason Rooks, who used to be, the prime lobbyist for you guys, isn't in this space anymore. I know Steve Butler's now re-engaging. I think it's good. I don't know if Steve's on the call. He got me to join the call, so I assume he's here somewhere. But I think that's important. This issue, I think, is more timely than ever. You have more millennials in the legislature than you've had before. After redistricting, which will come up this year, will be more metro people. I mean, this is an issue that I think there's grounds to work. And like I said, working on net metering, working on access to more common rules so every county doesn't torch you or every EMC doesn't torch you with their different rules. And then HOA, that's something that needs some help because it's a problem. So, okay.
Yeah,
All righty, hope that was helpful. Good talking to you guys and best of luck. So we will talk at you later. Thanks.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you.
See you. All right.
Take care. Thank you. All right. How are we looking on Spencer Frye? Has he stepped in or is he unavailable?
He's supposed to text when he can join, so I'll look for the text and I can talk and text at the same time.
Okay. All right, then we'll move into your part here, Jeanette. Take it away.
Okay, and I feel like we had some speakers, Chairman Parsons, Mike Dudgeon did just a great job of setting up the real importance of this day and the real need to start engaging with Georgia legislators about solar energy. So my job is to help make that something that is easy and hopefully comfortable for everyone on the call to do. Oh, Spencer Frye says 5 minutes. So if someone can keep an eye out in 5 minutes and bump him up, and I'm happy to let him talk and jump back in. So yeah, I will introduce myself just a little bit. So I'm the co-chair of Georgia Solar, but then I've also been a registered lobbyist in the state for many years, more than a decade, I think, and am happy to share some of my tips and strategies. So why don't you go ahead to the next slide? Obviously, it's a strange year. It's sort of the first year, maybe kind of second and a half year that we've had to deal with lobbying in a pandemic. And so it's harder than ever, in my experience, to actually get a hold of your legislator. And so I'd caution everyone on the Zoom today that this might be the hardest, the conversation might not be the hard part. Finding your legislator might be the hardest part. And so here are some of the tips that I have to find them. So the first thing is, if you don't know who your legislator is, I have a couple different links that I'll start sharing. If you don't know who your legislator is, that's the obvious most important thing to do. The two bills that Georgia Solar has highlighted, is highlighting today are HR 70 and HB 483. So Representative Kim Schofield talked about HR 70. It would set a goal of 100% clean energy by 2050. And then hopefully Representative Frye will come and talk about HB 483, but it's the bill dealing with HOAs. But there's the Secretary of State's website that can help you find your legislator. And then to find their phones and their contact information, you can go to senate.ga.gov and house.ga.gov. So hopefully that can get you started on that. The next thing is just actually getting in touch with them. So if you've got their cell phone, if for some reason you are buddies already with your state legislator, that's awesome. Good job. Shoot them a text and say you would love to have a quick conversation about solar. Next step would be to email your legislator. And I always say, make sure when you email them that you are a constituent. So House District XYZ resident wants to talk to you about solar. We've got some resources that I think we should have linked to in the email that we sent with the Zoom link. And we've got a sort of sample note that you could send to your legislator, and it includes a sample subject line that helps you craft that very important subject line. Legislators get a ton of email. And so anything that you can do to make sure they realize that you are either a business owner or a homeowner in their district is really, really important. Next would be to call their office. So find their office number on the website, call their aide, explain again that you're a constituent that wants to talk to them about solar, leave your name, ask for a call back, tell them you'll follow up with an email, send that, send the aide an email with sort of your contact information just to kind of continue to follow up where you can. And then more and more, I've been able to reach out and get in touch with legislators over social media. So not everyone is really active on social media, but a bunch of them are. And so you can either direct message them through Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, wherever it looks like they are the most active. I pulled sort of the instructions on how to direct message people in social media if you are new. There we go. What a great new way to do that. And then I always think it's nice to send people mail, snail mail. So probably won't get to them in time for, real action on this legislation this session, but I think great for everybody to take a minute to say, we just had Georgia Solar Lobby Day. I'm a constituent, work on solar, look forward to connecting with you more. So in addition to sort of just today, Georgia Solar is really interested in working with our members, the industry, solar enthusiasts, to make sure that we have lots of connections all over the legislature on both the Republicans and the Democrats to move legislation forward. Next slide. And then these are just my hot tips for actually talking to your legislator. So you'll see right there, this is probably true in life and lobbying, be nice and concise. You'll want to do a little bit of research about your legislator before you reach out and talk to them. They no longer have bios on the Senate and House websites, so you probably have to do a little bit of Googling and find their maybe campaign website. Learn a little bit about them, and regardless of what you learn, be nice. Make sure you're finding ways to connect. So the most obvious thing, if you're talking to your legislator, is connecting around the district, about where they live in the district, where you live, et cetera. And then you'll share really quickly why you want to talk to them. So we've prepared some talking points, some fact sheets on the 2 pieces of legislation that we think are important in the House when you're talking to your state representative. Make sure you think through what's my elevator pitch for these 2 quick bills. You're going to want to share who the authors of those bills are, and then ask for their support. And then make sure you're talking about next steps. So most of the time legislators will go, I don't know, I have not looked at that yet. I'll take a look and get back to you. And at that point you say, thank you so much. What's the best way to get back in touch with you? And see how they like to communicate. Maybe they'll say, let's continue to communicate over email, or maybe they'll say, here's my cell phone, be in touch. Whatever's the, it's just really important to make sure you're figuring out, how am I going to continue to stay in touch with this person and build a relationship, because we are kind of counting on everyone on this call to become a solar ambassador moving forward. So those are my lobbying tips. I'm happy to answer questions if folks have them. And I think we have a little poll.
And just so y'all know, if you are able to schedule a meeting with your legislator, let us know and we'll be happy to join in on that meeting.
In addition to joining in, I'll also, we've created a Google form. We would love to hear about your meeting and how that goes. Oh, Representative Frye cannot make it.
That's how it goes sometimes. They're very busy.
So please open that form, I guess, right now. Maybe we can make sure we send it out after today as well, so people don't lose the link when we close the chat. But we really want to know, how are your conversations going? And then we hope to be, again, all of you are kind of deputized to be our solar ambassadors. So we hope to reach back out to this group and the rest of our Georgia Solar membership.
Yeah, I'll throw a quick poll up. We just want to know who plans to contact their legislators for these 2 bills that we talked about today. Got a lot of yeses coming in.
And then to give folks a little time to vote, I think, so we talked about HR 70. I'm happy to answer more questions about that. And again, there's a fact sheet in the materials we sent out. Since Representative Frye is not going to join us, I think, Thatcher, did you want to say a couple things about that bill? Just share some of the details. We sort of referenced it a lot, but it seems like maybe.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, Jeanette. So I'm about to just post in the chat a link to to our wiki that we created. So this will hopefully give everybody both resources that Jeanette mentioned, but also will give us a place to add additional details as bills come up next year in the legislature, and then a place for you to post questions as you're encountering your elected officials, and a place for us to respond. So Montana, if you'll maybe click on that link, then I can just do a quick run through for folks to see that document.
Sure. Let's see, I need to share whole screen. Just a second, got it here. Okay.
Great. So again, this will be live and maintained live on Google Drive. So you can click on this, and would encourage you to save this as a resource, because we'll be updating this periodically as new things come in front of the General Assembly. But you saw the priorities there above. That section that Montana just scrolled past is kind of just some general stats and benefits of solar. So it could be kind of some quick just elevator pitchy kind of things for you to talk about the benefits and economic impact of solar. You'll scroll down, Montana. This is a link to help you find your legislator. Again, we would also encourage you to reach out to your local city council, county commission. A lot of these policies at an HOA level or at a MEAG level, for example, can be adjudicated by your city council or county commission. So reach out to them as well, and also your members of Congress. There's a sample email template to request a meeting, with your representative, and just a little bit of boilerplate, excuse me, into kind of what you might talk about with them. And then some tips, again, on kind of how to engage them, how to speak effectively with them. If you want to scroll down, Montana. So these are kind of the one-pagers that Jeanette just mentioned. So we're going to make an effort to create kind of a simple fact sheet on any legislation that goes in front of the General Assembly that we believe, our members would care about or want to engage in. And it's going to hopefully carry kind of a similar format that, again, kind of balances that wonkiness with, what's really going on here. So, I gave you the official bill summary. So this is what the members of the General Assembly read. And then kind of a translation of that in English as to what, the actual goal of that piece of legislation is. We'll tell you why Georgia Solar supports it. So, this HB 483 would be removing those restrictions to homeowners at an HOA level. So that's directly in line with our priority number 3. As Mike Dudgeon mentioned, unfortunately, this bill did not make it out of the House Judiciary Committee before crossover day, which happened yesterday. And crossover day is when a bill that originated in the House must go over to the Senate to be voted on in order to then potentially go to the governor for signature. It didn't make it there, so it sits in the House Judiciary Committee until next legislative session. And then the House Judiciary Committee can pass it out and try to get it over to the Senate side next year. And then trying to give some forecasts, right? So, the reality is we, like Congress, are pretty split right now in the Georgia General Assembly between Republicans and Democrats. So without some Republican sponsorship of this bill, that traditional bipartisan support, it's going to be unlikely that this bill would pass. But the advantage of the fact that it didn't make it over to the Senate is now, Montana, you scroll down a little bit farther, these bill sponsors, like Representative Schofield, who we heard from, or Representative Frye, now they've got 8 or 9 months to try to get Republican friends to sign on to this bill and then improve its chances of passing next year. So that's HB 483. And if you scroll down one more, Montana, there's, again, we're just trying to put up kind of resources that would be helpful. So, the University of Georgia just recently did a survey of 1,800 Georgians and their opinions on global warming and solar. And there's some really good trends to our advantage. So, 77% of registered Georgia voters say they believe that global warming is real, and they're willing to spend money to combat it. Also, there is a general opinion that solar is good and we need to do more for it. So again, those are just things that can be helpful. Pat Wilson, who's the head of economic development for the state of Georgia, just did an op-ed in the Atlanta Business Chronicle, being very pro renewable energy and the importance that renewable energy is playing now in economic development in our state. I think everybody on this call is familiar with the Facebook deal, right, where Walton EMC is supplying 100% of Facebook energy needs from renewables at their plant or their data center that's going up in East Georgia. And I think we're going to continue to see, more projects like that. So again, trying to just get you guys resources that help you as you're beginning to do this engagement. And like I said, we'll continue to build this, post, additional resources when they come up, create, kind of one pagers like the one we did on HB 483 to kind of give you the tools for advocacy. So I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions about that document. And I guess the last I would say is, please use that as a living document. So, we'll create a little Q&A section. We'll put some of the Q&A from today in that document, but, encourage you to continue to add questions there and seek answers. And the board of Georgia Solar and the policy committee specifically will kind of monitor that document on a weekly basis and try to answer your questions in as real time as we can.
Excellent. Super great document there. We're thrilled to share this sort of resource and get you, our members, more involved. It's definitely going to take a lot of effort to get what we want, but as I said at the beginning, things are primed right now. This is the best opportunity we've had, and the economics of solar are just there. So let's go make it happen. We can close a little early. We're aiming to do that so that we'd have some time to for all of you to take a look at these resources and hopefully go ahead and try to make that first communication to your legislator. So definitely be on the lookout for more news from the policy committee to come out in our newsletters in the coming weeks. Definitely have some exciting stuff in the pipeline. And lastly, just wanted to make an appeal to your generosity. A lot of you already contribute a lot to Georgia Solar. We're all volunteers. Everything we do is volunteer work, and everyone here is working full-time jobs on top of it. But anything that you can contribute is a big help in letting us continue these efforts. So with that, anybody got anything else to add?
So just one other ask, Montana, from the policy committee. If you are interested in getting more engaged in helping us from kind of a grassroots perspective and at the strategy level on advocacy, I would encourage you to send an email to admin@georgiasolar.org and just give us your contact information and kind of your availability to participate. And we're going to set up, again, some additional kind of small group trainings and some other engagements in the coming weeks to kind of help you get tools and resources. We may set up some teams of folks, right? So if somebody has successfully lobbied their HOA to get solar on their home, and they're willing to help others do that, we may kind of create an HOA task force, right? Or special operations team that, we can connect members with, and they can work with those folks to kind of do strategy there. So, feel free, or, not feel free, please, if you have time and you have interest in supporting these efforts, please volunteer, give us your time and talents to help expand our reach and our capabilities as an association. And thank you to everybody who has already and is planning to reach out to their elected officials. Thank you.
Hey, Montana, this is James. I'd like to make one short comment. I'd say thank you to the Georgia Solar Energy Association, to Fatima, to you, to Jeanette, Thatcher, Seth, all the elected officials that spoke today. Thank you. I appreciate all that you're doing, and I appreciate you advancing our cause for this format and the hard work that you're doing.
We appreciate that, James. Thanks to you as well. Everyone, have a great rest of your week, and we look forward to working with you all.
Thank you, everybody.